Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He has wrestled for numerous wrestling promotions over the course of his career. Former World Tag Team Champion. Pleased to welcome the one, the only, Chris Tipton. Welcome, Chris, to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the effort to get on here. I do a podcast here and there. I'm still trying to learn the ins and outs of it. So forgive my rookie expertise here. But yeah, 33 years in wrestling. 33, and I actually got into the ring 2 weeks ago because my 9-year-old son, who's autistic, he begged me to wrestle one more time. And I said, I can't do it. I'm old. I put 30 years in the ring. I'm beat down. I got bad back. But he said, come on, Dad, just one time. And I did. I got back in the ring 2 weeks ago. It was about 4 minutes long in a battle royal. I beat up a couple people, and then I threw myself out. So at least I got to go out, on my own terms. So that was pretty good.
And your son saw you in the ring in person. So
that was the best thing. Talk about positivity. That was the best thing for me when I looked down in the ring and I saw him there, because I've got 3 kids, 2 of them that are older, that are, one's 30 and one's 29. And then I have my 9-year-old. So my 2 older kids, grew up with me wrestling. My 9-year-old didn't. So he finally got to watch me live instead of seeing me on TV. So that was pretty cool. But my son could care less. I'm like, he could care less. My other 2 kids are like, wow, you wrestled Madison Square Garden. My 9-year-old, he could care less. I guess that's pretty good.
It's all that matters is that you have, your family cheering you on, supporting you. They're checking out what you've done, and you've accomplished so much. Let's start from the beginning, though. Let's talk about your childhood and upbringing. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Lakeland, Florida, which is the citrus capital of the world. And basically all we had were orange trees and professional wrestling. That's pretty much all we had. And I discovered it on a Saturday night at 7 p.m. when I was 7 years old. And I saw Ric Flair, and I was just completely blown away. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what wrestling was. I just saw men in underwear beating each other up. But I saw Ric Flair, and I was in love. So I knew what I wanted to do. And then I kept watching, and got my dad to take me to a match. And then once he took me, that was the end of it for me. So I knew what I wanted to do. And I graduated high school at 17, and I knew I was going to wrestle. Someone asked me what I wanted to do after high school, and I told them I was going to be a wrestler, and they kind of laughed at me. And, you're never going to do that. And 10 years later, I saw the guy in Walmart on a Saturday night, and he asked me to autograph something for his kids. So I said, that was cool. I said, I didn't ever say anything. It's like, remember when you said I wasn't going to do it? Now you want your kids something autographed. So that was pretty cool. I like that. But I always wanted to be a wrestler. That's what I wanted to do. And no one was going to tell me no, even though I wasn't tall. I wasn't muscular. I was, 5'11", maybe 6 foot at my best, and about 200 pounds. But I graduated high school and I actually turned down playing college baseball because I wanted to wrestle. And so I graduated in June, and September was my first match. I had 3 months of training, and 6 months after my first match, I had my first TV match in WCW. And I got the absolute stuffing beat out of me from one end to another. So I was 18 years old and 2 weeks. So I just turned 18 when I had my first match in WCW, and I got absolutely killed by the Nasty Boys. But it opened up a great career. So I'm definitely not complaining about that.
I mean, you're so young. Talk about, starting out 18 years old, fresh out of high school. It is tough, I'd imagine. You're learning on the job. It seems like, you really got your training in when you were on the road.
Well, and the good part was, well, you're right, because I was a child in a business of men. So I can remember, like, just my first couple matches, how just absolutely ridiculously young and naive I was. Just, I just really had no clue what I was doing. So I actually grew up in the wrestling business in more than one way. I mean, I had been around it. I actually lived close to Blackjack Mulligan for a while, and so I had been around it for a while, but I had always wanted to do it, always. And Florida Championship Wrestling from Florida was the best thing ever, because it was just amazing. And I'm finding now that people all over the United States, everyone had their little territorial wrestling, because now I'm watching Portland and I'm in love with what's going on in Portland. And that's all because of YouTube. And I wish we had YouTube 30 years ago, because if we had YouTube and Facebook and social media, I would have been a lot more famous than I was without all that stuff. And I had a really good career. God bless me very, very much. I'm very thankful for that.
Not to
But
mention,
I could have done a lot better if we would have had Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff.
not to mention too, all the old wrestling that was, gone and erased from the territory days, with the whole reel to reel, bicycle tapes and everything like that. That stuff definitely could have been archived and saved and preserved for today's era. Because there's
I
so
went.
much wrestling out there. It's
Oh,
amazing to
there's so
see.
much, and I went in Tampa. They had all of the tapes from all of the years from the '60s to when they closed down Florida Championship, and they were all up in a room upstairs in the office. And I went up there one time, and literally I was just looking at reel to reels, like you said, and there were thousands. Now they all got sold to WWE, and they're now in the library, and it's good because they're preserved forever. But I think they paid like $3 million for the whole library. So I'm just in there looking at $3 million worth of tapes. I love the history. I'm about the history of it, and as a wrestling collector myself, I basically collect stuff from the 40s, 50s, 60s. I'm a history guy. So I appreciate the stuff going on today, and I even like the stuff that I got going on, with myself. But I like the stuff from the old days too. That's what I collect. Stuff from the 50s, 60s. I don't know. Just had to throw that in. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, watching wrestling for so many years, you talk about Ric Flair and all the guys that came through those territories. What was it about, Ric Flair and some of the guys from that era that just really made you go, wow, I know I want to be a wrestler?
For me, it was Rick. Not only Flair, it was Dusty Rhodes. It was, I guess, when you grew up down here, we weren't really poor. We were everyone was kind of just, I don't know, we weren't poor. We just all survived together. Because when you went to the matches, you were sitting there next to, a black woman, a Mexican dude. We all were in it together. We all love wrestling. And what was your question? I have bad memory too. I start going off on things.
Being fascinated by guys like Ric Flair
Oh,
and Dusty Rhodes,
Dusty Rose, when he would put his hat down, and he would say, "Let me tell you something, baby. Get out the kitchen and get in the pickup truck and get Blackjack Mulligan. We're gonna come down to Lakeland Civic." Oh my God! When you're just a regular person and you're sitting there, and then you see Dusty Rose, and he says, "Hey, you got to come to the Civic Center because all hell's gonna break loose, and if you're not there, you're gonna miss the greatest thing ever." So you get in the pickup truck and you go. And I think the whole thing, what I was saying, we're all blended together because we were all there, all of us together, to watch this amazing thing. And it was amazing. Just 5,000 people crammed into an airtight building, everyone smoking cigarettes, throwing popcorn. You couldn't see 5 feet in front of your face from all the smoke, but everybody loved it. It was the best. I wish I could go back and just relive a Saturday night like that. I mean, it was amazing. It was without a doubt the best memory from my childhood. Without a doubt, the best memory from my childhood.
And it's the hottest ticket in town, hottest ticket in town. You're going to these shows every week with your friends and with your family, and it's for 2, 3 hours, just mindless entertainment, just enjoying just two guys, two women, two men going at it, uh, escaping everyday problems. So it's amazing to see that professional wrestling is still alive and well. I want to talk about your career, how you got started in the business. You'd mentioned you were 18, breaking into WCW. Talk about life on the road, learning from some of your mentors, any pieces of advice that you got from them that you still remember today.
And that's the main thing that you mentioned there about being on the road is we all used to ride together. So you would get usually there's a wrestler named Bob Cook who was an enhancement talent. He lost like me on TV, but Bob Cook, he was absolutely amazing. He was the guy that was there at every TV taping because he was so good. He also lived, outside of Tampa, so we rode up every week together. I used to watch him on TV. So now here it is 5 years later. I'm not the little kid. Now I'm actually riding with him. And we would talk about wrestling from Tampa to Atlanta. And that was all we talked about. We used to play the wrestling game where if I say a wrestler like Hulk Hogan, you would have to take the H from Hogan and you would have to say, Herbert Walker or whatever. We would just have to go back and forth and you keep naming wrestlers. We're still going on a game that's been going on for 30 years now. But you talk about wrestling. That's what you talk about. And that's what is missing today, I think, because when I talk to wrestlers today, they don't travel together. They kind of do their own thing. And that's where you learned how to wrestle was you would have a guy like Bob Cook watch your match, and then you would say to him, okay, what did I do wrong? Tell me, what did I do wrong? And if they were nice enough, which Bob always was, he would sit there and he would say, this was good and this was good and this sucked. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear, okay, now I know what to work on. 2 weeks ago, I gave some advice to a kid, and he literally looked at me like I had three heads. And I saw that he was looking at me like this and like kind of like, kind of like blowing me off. And I finished it with, well, I only wrestled 3,000 matches and 3-time world tag team champion, but I don't know anything. And I walked away. But, like I said, we used to talk about wrestling. That's all we did. And we lived it. I mean, we were on the road so much. You would have like a 3-day trip every week. So we would always end up in Atlanta for a night or two, but we would do like Dalton, Georgia, or Mobile, Alabama, or there was always something in the South that we would do. And so I did that for a year, and then I got a call to go to WWF. And they sent me to WWF, and the money went up. I went from making about $150 a night to making $250 a night, sometimes $500 a night, and they paid you in cash, and they paid for all your expenses. So that was the best. So finally, I started making some money in wrestling when I was about 19, when I started working for WWF, because when you're going to Atlanta and you're making $125 and you have to pay your way and gas and hotel and you have to eat, that's not a lot of money. And then it takes 2 weeks to get your check. So by the time you get your check in the mail, you had already spent that $125, that $250 or whatever. So the only thing you could do to make money was hope that you got to wrestle twice so that you would get paid twice. That way you knew, okay, at least I got $150 coming. But WWF was completely different. It was WCW was great, but WWF was first class. Everything was first class. We made so much money. We had so much fun. Got to be on the best TV shows. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. It was totally different than WCW.
Yeah,
Good time.
I mean, you're able to, see differences between both promotions, and you're in two separate locker rooms. Uh, so many different people. Who are some of the people that you got to ride with, in WWF, WWE, that you have fond memories of?
I did a couple of trips with Shawn Michaels. We did. We were. This is a quick story, but this is what wrestlers do to each other. We were traveling in a pack, four in one car, four in the other, and Shawn Michaels was in the car in front of us. And they stopped at a store, and then they took off. So we're behind them. We're doing about 90 miles an hour down the Garden State Parkway in Jersey, and it's snowing. So all of a sudden, we see the window open up, and we see a gallon of milk come flying out of the car. So Shawn Michaels threw a gallon of milk. It hit our windshield. And if you've never seen milk hit a windshield when it's snowing outside at 100 miles an hour, he basically almost killed us all. But we all laughed about it because it was funny, because that's just the stuff that we did. We thought it was funny that in a snowstorm, we can't see anything going 110 miles down the Garden State Parkway. How we all survived, I have no idea. But we used to drive so much, and like WCW, we used to drive. You would never get a flight. WWF, they would fly you almost everywhere. So flying us, then we're renting a car. We're renting Cadillacs. One time in Boston, the Cadillac, we it literally barely rolled in back in there because we jumped a median in Boston. We didn't mean to. We didn't know where we were going, and completely screwed up the Cadillac. But it was fully insured, so we were okay. Just so many things, and that happened every week. Every week it was something, but it was fun. It was fun because it was we had to have fun because it was so boring. You drive and then you get to a building and you sit there and you go eat and you sit there and then you do an interview and then you sit there, then you go wrestle, then you drive for another 10 hours. A lot of driving.
It's
A
the
lot of driving.
grind.
It's the grind, but we loved it. We loved it. If you can, let me tell you what, you learn to sleep sitting up like this. A lot of times you learn to sleep with your eyes open too. I mean, it's crazy. The only time I really slept was on the airplane because that was we drove so much. I mean, we're always driving. Sleeping in airplanes though. I can
Yeah,
sleep on an airplane.
you have to get used to it because you're doing so much of one thing, and then when you're doing something else, it's a different kind of, like, you know feel, because you're constantly used to, one thing. You're on the road, going from city to city, town to town on automobiles. When you're on the plane, it's a different story.
And they used to. Sometimes you'd have to take three flights in one day, and then rent a car because if they had to send you to Saskatoon for a layover for 2 hours because it was cheaper, they would send you to Saskatoon for 2 hours and make you wait and catch another flight to go back here because they were saving, $50 on a ticket. But, they didn't really care, about us back then. But, it was, and if you ask any of the guys from the 80s or any guys from 70s, all they're going to tell you is we had to be there. That was it. They didn't care how we got there. They just told us to be there. If they told you to be there at 1 o'clock, you were there at 1 o'clock. That's it. No matter how it took you to get there, you were there at 1 o'clock.
It's that discipline you have to, and the time commitment, because you have to show up at a certain point in order for you to, go to work and do what you need to do, and get ready and prepare, and, constantly go through that cycle. I mean, it is, hard work.
Sometimes you would get lucky if let's say they would schedule like 2 nights in Poughkeepsie. So you would get, 2 nights. So you get to wrestle, but then you wouldn't have to drive anywhere. You could stay in the hotel for a whole night, relax, enjoy yourself, catch up on your sleep, and then the next night you're in Poughkeepsie again. So you wrestle, then you haul butt again. But you got that one night where you could just sit there in the hotel and just have fun. And that didn't come a lot, but they're not grinding as much as we used to back then. I mean, they realize that all that it leads to is killing your talent because the body needs rest and it needs to be able to heal itself. And if you're wrestling 300 days a year, you don't have time to heal yourself. And it hurts. Trust me. Oh, you're landing on a trampoline. It doesn't hurt. It's all fake. Okay, come look at my medical records and you tell me it's fake. Come talk to my doctor and tell me how fake it is. It's ridiculous. It's like I'm basically, 15 years away from a walker or a wheelchair. And that's how a lot of the guys are. And it's sad, you watch the movie The Wrestler and the way that they ended up, the older guys. And I look at the guys that were on top when I came in, and a lot of them are dead. Most of them are dead. And it hurts, man. I lost a lot of friends. But they're taking care, at least now, they've realized that you can't wrestle 300 days a year anymore. You need to sleep. And they're taking a little bit more care of the wrestlers. It's more of a healthy business than it used to be. And that's
Yes.
good because wrestling is always going to be around. It's the oldest sport in the world. Wrestling and running, they were used in the caveman days to assert dominance, and they're still going to be here. So,
Yeah.
you're still going to have wrestling, but can we, slow it down a little bit so that Cody Rhodes is around for 30 years? You know, I
Yeah.
like Cody. I like Cody. I liked his dad. I liked his brother. I wrestled both of them.
Oh, what were they like to work with back in the
Oh, they
day?
were they were great. Dusty Rhodes, I mean, just getting hit with the elbow was amazing. Dustin is amazing. I mean, I was very lucky. I got to wrestle a lot of the guys that I grew up watching in Florida. Cuban Assassin and Billy Jack, and I mean, just a whole bunch of people Hector Guerrero, and people that I grew up watching that I absolutely loved, and I got to get in the ring with. I never got to wrestle Ric Flair. I never got to wrestle him. I wanted to very, very badly. It just didn't work out. I would have loved to, but I got to wrestle Terry Funk, and that was phenomenal. And I think my two favorite matches. Um, I had a really good one against Eddie Guerrero, which is classic. I absolutely loved it, and I had a really good one with Triple H. And whenever I see Triple H to this day, he still remembers me and still remembers that match because he was, brand new and I wasn't. And I actually, helped him out a lot. So he never forgot that. And I appreciate that because, I'm just there. I'm there to lose. I'm there to, make you look good. So it makes me feel good when you remember me. And even 30 years later, you still remember me. I have a lot of respect for him for that.
It's always nice, when you're wrestling someone, working with someone that is just, well known, like a Triple H or like an Eddie Guerrero, and however many years later they still remember you. I mean, it's just it has to feel real, satisfying and gratifying to know that you were a part of their career.
Oh, absolutely. And it there's not a lot of, it's not a job where you get a lot of praise, when you're walking to the ring, people are yelling at you, spitting at you, calling you very bad names because they know that you're going to lose. And you're going to lose, but the trick is to go out there and make them think you got a chance. Make them think, you know what? Wow, oh my God, this guy almost had him. I almost had Lex Luger once. I had him down for a 2 count. And they were flipping out on TV. They're like, he just body slammed Lex Luger. I mean, it was pretty cool. But yeah, I body slammed Lex Luger, and that's the main thing. If you're wrestling somebody, If you just go out there and just beat them up, they're nobody. But if you give them a little bit and you let them slam you or this and that, then it's like, hey, damn, they actually beat somebody, you know? So that's just my theory. I wish more people thought that way, but you know, I didn't have a problem. Look, I knew I was there to lose. It didn't bother me if it was in 5 seconds or 30 minutes. You know, usually the quicker the better for me, but like if I got to work with Eddie Guerrero for 10 minutes, oh, it was the best. Oh, even Lex Luger. I had 10-minute match with Lex Luger and it was great. Absolutely fabulous. That was fun. It's not about the money, I guess, for guys like me because we don't have the big contracts. You know, we're not going to make the 500 grand a year contracts, but that means a lot to us when people remember us or when a fan says, "Man, I used to watch you on TV, and man, you used to get the crap beat out of you." Even that, it's like when they remember certain ways you got your butt beat. That's pretty cool. I had a guy actually mail me a letter from Australia the other day, and he had been watching some tapes of me. Mailed me a letter from Australia, wanted an autograph, and I'm like, wow. So it's still, and this was like last week. I'm like, that was 30 years ago, and people are still seeing it. That's pretty cool. But then I was like, God, I got people stalking me from Australia.
Well, it's nice to know that when you have fans from around the world, especially with access to, the network and now with Netflix, they can see everything that happened back then and they can look you up online to find out where is Chris Tipton now? What's he doing? And to write a very nice message, I mean, that has to feel real good.
Oh, absolutely. And it's nice to know that you touched people, and even if it's by you getting beat up and laying down and counting ceiling tiles. I mean, not everybody can do it, and that's the thing. There were anyone could go to wrestling school, and they might be able to get a match on TV. It wasn't hard to do. What was hard to do was to get invited back, and I was lucky enough to get invited back until I got hurt and my career ended. So I was always invited back, and that was the main thing for me. There are thousands of people that wrestled on Monday Night Raw or whatever, and they got their butt kicked, and they had their one time in the sun, and that was it. But then you got guys that made a career out of it, like Barry Horowitz, and people like Barry Horowitz. I mean, he's the best example. That man wrestled everywhere. And, most of the time he lost, but he had one great career and he did a lot for the business. And he's a friend of mine. And I haven't seen him in a while, but he's a good guy. And
I had a pleasure. It was a pleasure having him on the show recently. We were talking about, kind of the same thing about being remembered for so many years and being in the ring with so many people. So when you're sharing the ring, sharing the spotlight, was there any particular match that you enjoyed the most?
I will tell you, besides the Eddie Guerrero one, my last match in WWF was against Crash Holly. And it was definitely my favorite WWF match. We had a little comedy in there. We had a good time. And I think the best part was I didn't know it was my last match because I didn't know I was going to get hurt. So I went out there and we had a really good match. It went 8 minutes and everything was great. And I was like, man, this was such a good match. I was so happy with it. And then I got hurt not too long later. And that was the end of it. And I'm like, well, at least I ended up on a good match. So that was my favorite. But I can definitely tell you my least favorite matches. And that was against Big Van Vader. I wrestled him 5 times. And every time he killed me. And he liked me. He liked me. That was the thing. We were friends. We were friends. Um, but he beat me up, and it got worse every time. And I really thought he didn't like me, but he really did like me. But my God, when he hits you, he hits you so hard. That was, and I played high school football, and I had never seen stars in my life until I got in the ring with him. And then I saw stars, and that was the first time I wrestled him. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Ugh, not in a good way. Not in a good way at all.
When he's a huge guy. This is a 300-pound man. I'd imagine, you feel very nervous and anxious just being in the ring with somebody that big because this dude's about to beat the tar out of you.
Well, and it was 2 weeks before I wrestled him that he had power bombed a guy and he broke his back. The guy's name was Joe Thurman, and it was just a freak accident. I mean, I don't think Vader did anything intentional. He just power bombed him and broke the guy's back. Sometimes, listen, when we were created, I don't think God took into effect the fact that people are going to be body slammed on plywood and metal beams. So he really didn't create our body to put up with stuff like that. So that's probably not a good idea.
Well, what
It's probably not a good idea to wrestle in the first place, but here we are.
what led you talked about the Crash Holly match. Talk about when you found out that you couldn't do it anymore or couldn't do it full
Ugh.
time anymore.
I got hit. I got hit in the head with a metal crutch, and it was from behind, and it wasn't. The guy thought I was zigging, and I ended up zagging, and I wasn't even looking, and it barely hit me in the head. It wasn't hard. I mean, it was not hard. I'd taken 1,000 shots like that, and I woke up 4 days later completely blind. So it was the right spot. I guess it hit me. But I was literally laying in a hospital bed, and the doctor said, look, you're done. I mean, you can't wrestle anymore. And I was like, man, this is my whole life, because we were the world tag team champions. We're in the middle of um, a very successful tour, and we were about to sign with TNA. They were just starting to do the pay-per-views, so we were going to do the first 4 pay-per-views, and that was when I got hurt. So I was absolutely miserable. I mean, it was not how I wanted my career to end. But so for 6 months, I sat there just absolutely miserable, and I wasn't wrestling anymore. I went out and I got a real job and just started living life. And 6 months later, I was miserable. So I said, I'm going to go wrestle, and I just going to do it because I want to do it, and I don't care. If I go blind, I go blind. I want to wrestle. And looking back on it now, that's the only regret that I have. I wish I would have just gone ahead and gone against the doctor's advice and just wrestled. The mistake that I made was saying I'm done. And, I made a decision. I just made a wrong decision. The wrong decision for me at the time. But I didn't, you don't know you're making a bad decision at the time, until years later.
It's hard, because you've done it for so long, and that's the one thing that like in your head is wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. And when you decide you can't do it anymore, you're being told that you can't do it anymore, it hurts, both
It does.
figuratively and literally, because that's all you know. That's what you've been doing for so long.
That was it. That was all I knew. I mean, it was like I didn't have any other experience. And when I went and applied for jobs, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I didn't see any spots on there for, arm drags and hip tosses and stuff like that. So, I had to start at the bottom there too. I ended up working in corrections and, started working out of jail and did that for quite a while. And, now I have a good state job. I work for the state now, and I work hard for the state of Florida, and I love, everything worked out for me. That's the best part. I wish my career would have been a little bit longer than it was, but I got 10 really good years. And now I do a lot of charity work now. Um, if if we can run a show down here for whatever organization, we work with them. Wrestlers will usually work cheap if it's for a legitimate charity and they know that, it's not going in someone's pocket. You can get wrestlers, to work pretty cheap. So we do a lot of benefit shows and stuff like that to help kids, and we do summer camp shows every year. I find that it's a good way to make money for people, for events, for charities, and people love wrestling, and we'll do the show to, we fit the customer. We do a lot of stuff with kids and birthday parties, I mean, we'll do anything. But the main stuff we do are anything that can benefit schools. We we do things where all of the profits go to the school, 100%. We don't want anything. We don't take any of the profits. We don't. It's good for the schools. They get to do they sell all the concessions and stuff. They make all the money. That's good. It makes us happy. It's a way of giving back because you know what, we had good careers, and I had a good career, and I'm very thankful that even though it was my hard work, I'm thankful that I had the opportunities to do what I was able to do, and not many people were able to do that. And my generation was the last generation of people that basically go out there on TV and get beat up. They don't do that anymore. It's big guys and against big guys. So I was the last of a dying breed.
Well, outside of the charity shows that you've done, let's talk about some of the stuff that you've personally done as far as charity work. What kinds of things have you done over the years that you want to talk about that you've helped out with in your community?
I think the best thing that I did that I felt the most impact for, and I really need to get it started back up again, is we used to go on Christmas Day to All Children's Hospital in Tampa, and we did that for many years. And we would bring Santa and bring toys, and that fell through about 10 or 11 years ago. And I don't know how it did that, but we did that in Tampa, and we would hit every children's hospital in the area, and oh man, that was so much fun. I mean, and always doing fundraisers for schools. That's the main thing. I've done so many. I think my favorite one was most of the ones that we do for schools will involve a teacher or a coach or something like that. And I actually got to wrestle my high school principal, and we ended up raising about $8,000 for the band, which was nice. Um,
Wrestling your high school principal.
I wrestled my high school principal.
How
Yeah,
did
that
that
was
happen?
he was the principal of the school, and we wanted to fill the building, so I came to an assembly that they were having and got on the microphone and started yelling at him, and I challenged him to a wrestling match, and we packed it out. I mean, I think every student, every parent, it was completely full. We had to put it on the football field instead of in the basketball gym, and we made a ton of money for the school. And that's the main thing. I mean, I try to focus mainly on the community because I like where I live, and if we can make some people smile, that's always a good thing. Kids love wrestling, and parents love wrestling. And like you said, it's a good escape. It's a way to, you know, it's like a movie. You can get away for 3 hours, and you don't have to deal with the mortgage and homework and everything, raising kids and all that crazy stuff you have to do every day.
Well, it's definitely heartwarming. And so you being able to go out there and spread some joy and make these kids and the parents smile and get them away from all the craziness in the world. It's a good feeling.
We did a few years ago. We lost a wrestler who was in ECW and a just a great guy. His name was Hack Myers, and he was one of my very best friends, and he had tumors on his brain. And by the time they found him, they got him out, and everything was good, and he was mending, but he caught meningitis in the hospital. And by the time he got back and they discovered the meningitis, he died 2 days later. So we did, in his honor, we did a show for the American Cancer Society and also for the Red Cross. And those were his favorite charities. And the WWF actually donated some stuff, which was very nice of them. And we were able to give $10,000 to the charities. That was the most successful one for me. And we got to Hack's family was there, so they got to enjoy that. And it all went to, none of the wrestlers took a payday, and it all went to those two charities. And I'm a firm believer, if you don't give back in general, if you don't give back, then you're not a nice person to begin with. I mean, you can't get anywhere in life without someone helping you at some point. So if you don't give back, what does that say about you? Because I know I didn't get here on my own. There are people that had to help me out. So I try to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's all about paying it forward and making a difference.
That's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Well, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you, Chris. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media if they want to just say hello or reach out?
Classic Chris Nelson on Facebook. That's me. I'm not too computer good, so I do have a Facebook account. Either Chris Tipton or Classic Chris Nelson. Either one.
All right.
I'm there.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Chris, and you're more than welcome to come back.
All right. Thanks a lot. You have a good one. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.